The prefrontal cortex versus the shortcut. The neuroscience of habit. We've all been there. You're halfway through a task you've done 1,000 times, securing a load in a warehouse, setting up a retail display, clearing a jam in a piece of machinery, and you realize you've skipped a step. You didn't do it on purpose. You aren't being lazy. In fact, your brain thought it was doing you a massive favor. This is the eternal tug of war happening inside your skull. The battle between the prefrontal cortex, the logic captain, and the basal ganglia, the autopilot. In the world of workplace safety, understanding this neurological wrestling match is the difference between a close call and a standard Tuesday. If we want to build safer workplaces, we have to stop fighting human biology and start working with it. Start with this. Your brain is an energy hog. It accounts for about 2% of your body weight, but consumes roughly 20% of your daily energy. So your brain is evolutionarily designed to be lazy, or more accurately, efficient. It is constantly looking for ways to save energy by turning repetitive tasks into habits. The prefrontal cortex is the newest part of the human brain, right behind your forehead, responsible for executive function, decision-making, risk assessment, logical reasoning, complex planning. When you're learning a new safety protocol, your PFC is lit up like a Christmas tree. The downside? The PFC is expensive. It burns a lot of glucose. It tires easily. And it's slow. So as you repeat an action, your brain undergoes what neuroscientists call a neural handoff. The PFC gets tired of micromanaging. The controls get passed to the basal ganglia, specifically the striatum, deep in the center of your brain. This is where automatic behaviors live. Once a task moves to the basal ganglia, it becomes a shortcut. You no longer have to think about the steps. You just execute them. This is how you can drive home from work and not actually remember the drive. Your autopilot took over. Now here's the problem. In a perfect world, our autopilot would only store the safest, most efficient habits. But the brain doesn't naturally prioritize safety the way a compliance manual does. It prioritizes reward and efficiency. Daniel Kahneman called these two modes System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, intuitive, automatic, the realm of the basal ganglia. System 2 is slow, logical, effortful, the realm of the prefrontal cortex. When you take a shortcut at work, like skipping gloves for a 2-second task, System 1 is in charge. It sees the reward, saving time, avoiding hassle, and it ignores the risk, because the risk is a statistical abstraction. The reward is immediate. And here's the trap. Every time you take a shortcut and nothing goes wrong, your brain gives you a tiny hit of dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical of do that again. It reinforces the neural pathway. Eventually, the shortcut isn't a choice anymore. It's the default setting. The logical PFC knows skipping the safety check is a bad idea. But the PFC is exhausted by 3 p.m. When the captain is tired, the autopilot takes the wheel. And the autopilot loves the path of least resistance. Recent neuroscience suggests something fascinating about how we choose. Our brains don't just pick a path. They exist in a kind of superposition, multiple possible actions held at once, until we focus our attention on one. When you're mindful and present, you're observing your choices. The PFC stays in control. When you lose focus, that quantum state of decision-making collapses into the most ingrained habit. If your habit is the shortcut, that's what plays. But here's where it gets nuanced. Not every brain handles this handoff the same way. And age changes everything. In children and adolescents, the prefrontal cortex is still under construction. The logic captain isn't fully built yet. So a parent isn't coaching a finished system. They're helping build it. That means children can't rely on abstract lectures like be careful or think ahead. They need safety to be concrete, repetitive, visible, practiced in the moment. Always stopping at the curb. Always the helmet before the wheels move. In adults, the challenge is different. The prefrontal cortex is fully built, but it isn't always available at full strength. Under time pressure, multitasking, hunger, or fatigue, adult executive function dips fast. So habit formation at work isn't about teaching people to care. It's about making the safe behavior easier to retrieve under stress. That's why cues, Checklists, verbal routines, and team norms work. They reduce the mental load on the prefrontal cortex when conditions are messy. Parents wire the system. Leaders stabilize it under pressure. Neurodivergent brains complicate this further. With ADHD, the PFC may struggle with inhibition control, making it harder to stop a System 1 impulse once it starts. The reward of a shortcut can feel more intense. With autism, there's often stronger reliance on the basal ganglia for routine, which can be a massive asset for safety if the initial habit is built correctly. But shifting that habit later requires significantly more effort. A one-size-fits-all approach to safety behavior fails because it ignores how differently brains develop, function, and respond to load across the lifespan. So how do we tip the scales? 4 moves. 1. Externalize the prefrontal cortex. Use visual cues, floor markings, high-contrast signs, point-of-use reminders. These act as external logic captains. They grab System 1's attention and force a moment of observation that resets the habit loop.
2. Use the point and call method. It's used heavily in Japanese rail systems. The worker physically points at the safety check and says it out loud. Switch is off. Clear. That single move forces the task back from the basal ganglia into the PFC. It breaks the autopilot trance by engaging multiple senses at once.
3. Reward the slow way. The brain loves dopamine, so we need to reward the logical, safe path. I noticed you took the time to set that ladder upright. That's how we do it here.
4. Manage cognitive load. If you know your team's PFCs are going to be fried by the end of a shift, don't schedule the highest risk, most complex tasks for 4:30 p.m. Recognize that shortcut-seeking behavior is a biological symptom of fatigue. Let's move the high-risk tasks to earlier in the day.
Here's the thing about old habits. They aren't deleted, they get overwritten. The old shortcut pathway in the basal ganglia remains, like an old hiking trail. If we get stressed, tired, or rushed, we wander back onto it. So safety isn't just a set of rules. It's a biological battle for energy and efficiency. We can't change the anatomy of the prefrontal cortex, but we can change the environment in which it operates. The goal isn't to eliminate the autopilot. We need it to function. The goal is to train the autopilot so well that the safe way becomes the shortcut. When the logic of the captain and the speed of the autopilot align, that's where true safety culture lives.